Welcome, everybody. I know you've been waiting for this. It's part 2.
Wow.
You are on Feng Shui with Anita and Cheryl, our YouTube channel. And this is part of our playlist, the F.L.A.W.C, F.L.A.W.C, which originated, and we're getting so many amazing definitions of that acronym, but it originated with Fruit Loops and Wind Chimes Club. And our intention behind this is to introduce our flock to our flock. Because between Anita and I, we know a lot of people, and some of them have had profound impacts on our lives. And our guest today in this part 2 is one of those. Anita.
And we are so honored and blessed to have our dear friend and brother, David T. Gross, join us for a second time, because you know what, we could just be in your energy for so long, and we could have hours and hours of conversations, because you are just so easy to talk to, and you have so much valuable information to share. And I just have to ask, David.
Yes.
What is your definition or interpretation of F.L.A.W.C?
Love the question. And thank you, Cheryl and Anita, for the opportunity to connect with you, because, oh man, I missed getting my arms around you and your audience as well. So here we go. So my definition of your acronym comes from my experiences growing up in 7 countries in Asia and living and working in sacred spaces in 7 countries in Asia, where compassion was at the core of everything that we did. And therefore, mine is forever lovingly aligned with compassion.
That just feels so beautiful.
It does.
If I can give you an image here, just to kind of ground that,
please.
If you can imagine, and I'll say me because it was my experience, if you can imagine me in robes, sitting in a sacred space that is 800 years old, however you would imagine that, with sticks of incense kind of wafting up into the air, just gently floating up into the air. And for me, that is also a sense of my connection from the earthly 3D self to the 5D self and higher dimensions. So imagine me sitting in robes in a sacred space that is over 800 years old, with some incense, not cloyingly making you choke on it, but it's there and it's floating up to the ceiling. And imagine, it gets really hard to speak even, because he's so powerfully connected with me. Imagine, I'll call him the master. Imagine the master seated within arm's reach, head bowed, and he's chanting. And what he is chanting is instilling within us, those of us who are with him, the heartbeat of compassion from our hearts to one another, to the space that we are in, and literally to the planet. So he is the initiator of this heartbeat, and from his heart of compassion for us, our hearts are ignited. And as our hearts are ignited, we breathe in the essence of the experience, and we permeate our compassion out as far as we can. Well, we know it's going to go limitless, but we just permeate the heart energy outwards with compassion for all. So forever lovingly aligned with compassion is, for me, a visceral experience that I've had in sacred spaces that are over 800 years old.
Wow. And you know, that's so interesting, because in my book that I wrote about Feng Shui, I talk about the compass. And there is the compass school Feng Shui, which some people are familiar with. But I also bring it back to the word compassion, because the root word of compassion is compass. And
it's finding your way home.
We all have that compass within inside of us, which is activating that heart energy, which is compassion.
It is.
And
And in my
I
teaching,
love
we call it finding your way home.
Yeah.
Because and I'm when I speak home, I'm speaking on the cosmic level.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I love that.
Okay, so now we've got a slight, like
Here we
just a
are.
little tiny tease.
It wasn't meant to be that.
800-year-old sacred space.
Mhm.
There's a story, and I know there's more than one. How did David T. Gross wind up in an 800-year-old sacred space? Because this is going to be good. I just know it.
And I will try to keep it brief, which you know what that might mean, right? And we have more sirens. Go figure. Okay.
Oh, deja vu. That's why you got more sirens.
Exactly. Here's how that came to be. My great-great-grandfather, European born, left Europe in the mid 1800s and went to Japan. Goosebumps on every cell of my body here. So my great-great-grandfather lived in Japan from the 1850s till the end of the 1800s. I've always known of him, and actually we have newspaper clippings of things from that period of time. Doesn't sound like modern newspapers, but we have proof that he was in the country. So I lived in Japan for 7 years. When I first flew into Japan in 1979, the very first time I'd visited Japan, I remember landing in Narita Airport in Tokyo to an extraordinary experience that I could not understand. My heart told me, you're going home. And my head was saying, well, what does that mean? I couldn't quite comprehend what my heart was feeling. I'm going home, I'm going home, I'm going home. And that was way before I had an awareness of 15 past lives in temples, cultures in 7 countries or more countries in Asia. So I'd always known that my great-great-grandfather had lived in Japan. I'm going to jump forward in time, probably 1983-ish or so. My mom came to visit me in Japan, and this is my great-great-grandfather on my maternal side. She and I found his grave in Kobe in Japan. And because he's on my mom's side of the family, my last name is Gross. His last name is not that. It's not that, right? We found his grave, and we found that he had passed. It was 1898 or something like that. Was on the gravestone. We found his grave in this Balinese kind of layered graveyard that went over this mountain, over this hill, and I was able to speak enough Japanese to talk to the guy who said, okay, we can find him. And they found him, and they gave us a map, and we traipsed up and down this mountain. We found his grave. It was kind of a terraced thing here, so there was a grave on the front, grave on the back, and then it was up to the next level, down to the next level, sort of thing. So on his level, he was the grave on the front. My mom and I were cleaning the grave, thinking, isn't this remarkable that we would find his grave from the 1800s, and here he is, and he is blood to us, right? Or we are blood connected to him. My mom shook me and said, David, turn around. And anyway, so I thought, something big. Foot to foot with my great-great-grandfather's grave in Kobe in Japan from the 1800s, with the last name that is not my last name right now, was a grave of a woman whose last name is Gross. How does that happen? Like, how does that, right? Seriously. Anyway, so that's kind of sort of is a capstone experience to why I went to Japan in the first place. And it was my travels to Japan, living in Japan for 7 years, and I don't have them. I wish I thought about this and prepared more, because I would have had it right here. I was gifted a prayer bowl from a monk in the temples that had been, and he was in his 80s when he gifted it to me, and he'd probably had it since he was 6. And there was something in him that told him to gift this to me. At the time, I was touched by the gifting and receiving of this bowl, but I didn't understand what it really meant. And it's only been with my connected work over time, when I'm able to transcend dimensions to get the answers to what's that all about, that I have the answers to my deep level of connection to sacred spaces, temple cultures in Asia.
Cheryl, you just
Hopefully
got
that
goosebumps.
answers.
I was totally covered in goosebumps with that. Like, just completely. Woohoo!
Can't make that stuff up, right? Like,
You
seriously.
can't
Yeah,
make this
really.
stuff up.
And I've got pictures to prove it. Yeah, exactly.
I don't need proof, pictures,
I know.
whatever.
Yeah.
And if our listeners need proof, well, I'm sorry.
But it's amazing to me because I live, given best case scenario, best circumstances on the planet, my choice would be to live in Asia half of the year, if not longer.
Mm.
And when I am in temple culture, or when I am in sacred spaces, so it doesn't have to be a temple per se, formal temple per se, but when I am in that environment, here we go, the environment of contemplation, and the environment where contemplation is connected with compassion, that is where my energy flows so freely, not only in my 3D physical self, but connected with my higher self. That those experiences in those sacred spaces to me is home. I don't need a certain specific geographic location to feel that. And I don't even have to be in Asia to feel that, in a temple to feel that either. But that is the essence that reconnects me, alliteration again, there's a we thing, that reconnects me and reminds me of who I am from my higher self.
Okay, so tell our viewers then how they can, get in that flow. What we like to call that, that synchronicity, or, as Marilyn Harper often says, the slipstream. So do you have any nuggets or tidbits for our viewers of how they can get into that beautiful flow and that connectedness to source energy?
Yes. And because it's a multi-chapter potential answer, right? So, and there's also a spectrum from those who are really in challenging spaces compared to those who have a bit of an easier time right now, to those who are already in a level of ease and just want more connection and more flow.
Good point.
The best languaging that I can use, and actually I haven't shared this with anybody, which is kind of cool. So I was doing a session about a month ago, and in that session was this information, this languaging. And the languaging was around the density of energy. So when we talk about that, it feels kind of heavy, like anger feels heavy. And Esther Hicks has her vibrational scale, right? So we got the whole week, that's already documented here. But if we use the word density to perceive, no, if we use the word density to describe what we are perceiving, so that some of the lower vibrational energies, be it from fear down to grief, down to guilt, down to anger, to resentment, whatever it happens to be, when we find ourselves, here we go. I'm unraveling the chapters as they flow into my mind, right? For anybody who's listening, to me, we could probably share with you dozens of ways to align. But the most valuable one in the given short period of time that we have right now is this. When you find yourself, which is going to be in your heart and in your gut, your head might be triggering the whole thing, but your heart and your gut are going to feel that lower, dense, heavy energy of doesn't feel so good right now, right? Whenever you find yourself feeling the weightiness of whatever it happens to be, the weightiness of your thoughts, the weightiness of your beliefs, the weightiness of whatever's going on here, from my temple experiences, the best insight that I can share right now, which would be most useful, is to just disconnect from that and just be. Don't try to push it away. Don't try to move over here because the leap is too far, right? Esther Hicks, and my favorite expression from Esther Hicks, you're going to be off in the bushes. You can't hold on to that. I love that expression, right? So anybody who's familiar with Esther Hicks' work is going to know what I mean when I say you're off in the bushes, right? So from my experience, the most valuable in a very short period of time exercise that one could practice, or practice that one could exercise and get better at, is not trying to push away with what you don't want, because that's a connection to it that you can't release. It's hard to release, right? It's the calm stepping aside from that which doesn't feel so good, not even trying to observe it yet, just stepping aside from it, which means, and it's not looking for distraction at all, because looking for distraction has intention. I don't want that. I want a distraction here. Esther Hicks' work as well, right? So don't look for a distraction from what you don't want, because what you don't want is still active in the vibration, but instead just calmly step aside. So here's, let's put it into a visual. For anyone who is ever feeling the heaviness of thoughts, the heaviness of beliefs, the heaviness of emotions that don't feel good to you right now, if you can, and I use, kind of obvious, I use a picture of my mom. I take a picture of my mom and I hold the picture of my mom against my heart. Whoa, gets emotional, damn. And I just feel her with me. So I'm not trying to disassociate, disconnect, push away what I don't want. I'm embracing what I love. I'm embracing with compassion. And I hold a picture of my mom against my heart. And I focus on feeling my love for her and her love for me. And that flow, again, going into the flow state, right? My love for her, her love for me. And I just feel that. And I allow that to become my focus. And when that is my focus, I find myself very easily and rather quickly in a kind of a clean slate state of being. And it's from there that I can then, if I choose to, or if I have the techniques or the tools or the wherewithal or the strategies, rise above that to say, hey, what's really going on over there that made me so kind of unhappy, uncomfortable, not feeling so good. So the thing is, for me, don't try to push it away. Shift yourself away into a clean slate state of being. And my way of doing that is by taking a picture of my mom against my heart and just feeling the energy and the love that we share for one another. That's what I do.
So you're getting
it's fail safe.
You're getting out of here and into here.
Well, it's fail safe because no matter how deep, how heavy, how whatever the experience is that's kind of pinching me off. Again, it's pinching me off from the expansiveness of who I am, no matter how heavy or hard or difficult that might feel. In the presence of my love for my mom, it's gone. It's gone. Yeah. And what all that means is that it's me now. It's my opportunity. I love the word opportunity. I use that a lot. It's my opportunity to shift my focus consciously to my mom. And feel her, remember her, although she talks to me all the time, feel her with me. And that is my process to shift into that clean slate state of being.
And so anybody can do that. Yeah.
Well, they need to focus or find something that evokes that.
I could use my dog, but it's not quite the same as my mom. A picture of my dog, right?
But to start, right, for someone just starting and hearing this information for the first time,
yes,
based on their situation, that could be a big leap.
And here we go. So let's just kind of touch base on that for a second here. The important thing for me is also to counsel. Find, be it a picture, be it an object, be it a place, doesn't matter what it is, that clean slate state of being. Allow yourself to connect with what is the easiest that's going to get you there. Don't try to work at it. Oh, I'm going to take a picture of that over there, or I'm going to think about this here. I'm going to try to remember it. I'm going to work on that. It's like, no. You're counterintuitive to the energy that we want to flow. It must be easy to it. There we go. Anita, you said where the eye goes, right? And all of that there. So if you just, if one were just to think, what makes me feel really good every time I connect with it? Be it a picture, be it a word, doesn't matter what it is, be it an object. What makes me feel so connected, so full of compassion, so full of love? Maybe for them, maybe for me, maybe for a time in my life. What is that? Keep it simple, make it easy. So you don't have to work at that, because that's actually counterintuitive to getting into that flow state.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that. And that kind of, we can just feel your energy, your compassion, your own essence of just, wanting to educate. I can just, you just want
the teacher in me is very much alive.
It's like, I want everybody to learn something here. And so where does that motivation come from? Where does that come from? Your mom?
My mom. Yeah.
Was she a teacher?
Yes.
Okay.
in many, many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not only in a, and not in, okay, here we go. And not formally in a classroom like I've been.
Mm-hmm.
Not, no, but my mom and hopefully many of us have women in our lives that we can relate to. Kind of, this story makes sense. You know what it means to have a woman in your life. For me, it was my mom, where people in the neighborhood, 6 years old, 60 years old, come for counsel. People drop in for coffee. People drop in for tea. People give her a call. She was the one that people would come to because she would hold space for them. She would hold them with compassion. She would share her love for them, and she would shift them through getting back into their sense of what flow would be for them.
Interesting, because all I'm hearing is she was the master.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a blessing.
Yeah. Truly, truly.
What a blessing. And I love that you recognize, I mean, how couldn't you, living in all of those countries and spending time in all those sacred spaces? I mean, it just seems like a natural flow for you to recognize and you know, connect with your mother's energy, even though her physical form is no longer with us.
So
and
get this for
so
something
important, really, for other people to understand that we all have that ability. We all can do that. So if there is a, you know, a loved one that has transitioned energetically, they're still there. And
we wrote 6 books together after she passed.
Wow.
180 chapters after she passed.
Wow.
And she talks to me all the time. Can I share with you two? One is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll bring it back home and then hopefully remember where I wanted to go with this one. When I was living in Japan from 1983 to 1990, and I came home at one point in time thinking, okay, I'm ready to come home. I came home. My dad said, okay, I'll give you my company. I'll sign you over to the company. You can take control, all that maybe fatherly kind of stuff for concern of me. I get it. My mom said to me, David, you're not done. You have to go back. She said, she is the one who said to me, I want more than anything for you to be here with me, but you're not done. You have to go back to Asia. Get that for unconditional love, right?
Wow.
Yeah, pretty powerful.
Her knowingness,
right?
and comes back to her being the master.
Yes. And so also, I don't want to lose that stream of thought because it's flashed by pretty quickly. So I'm going to catch up to it and hopefully bring it back into focus here. When Anita, when you were speaking about the being in the flow and all of, and however we allow ourselves to transition or shift into that flow state. There was a point in time in my life where, and a number of times actually, because I said, I'm pretty sure that I shared earlier, 7 times I have given away everything I've owned and started fresh. I have had times in my life where I questioned my own value. I questioned my own worth. And by questioning my own value, questioning my own worth, and I can go into the depths about the why, because I figured that stuff out in my head anyway. But the experience was I was questioning my value, questioning my worth, which is really a me thing, not a we thing. I wasn't questioning there, but I was questioning me. There were times when even allowing myself to shift into a flow state was not on the table. It wasn't in the headlights. It wasn't even on the horizon as an opportunity over there that I could even aim for. It wasn't even in my conscious awareness because I had left myself behind because I'd pinched myself off from the magnitude of the light that I'm connected with. So for any viewers also to understand, to be very aware of, and here I'm kind of reeling it back in on the dock right now. So here's the bottom line point here. To be very aware, 3 levels. We set high intentions, very common. I mean, we all set intentions. Hey, what are you gonna do? Setting a good intention. Let's say 100 out of 100 intention. The reality for many of us that we don't like to admit sometimes is that our expectation is slightly less. We lower the expectations. So when something doesn't quite pan out 100%, we can say, well, I didn't quite think it would go, or I didn't quite think it would do that, right? So and sometimes we bust ourselves by even saying the words, well, I didn't really quite think it would be that good, right? So we set high intention. That's human nature, hopefully. But the reality is sometimes our expectation is lowered, and we do that to ourselves. We set a limit. I call it the inner glass ceiling. We set the limit of our expectations. But what truly pinches us off, and I go back to Feng Shui and flow and alignment, what truly pinches us off from the receiving is the allowing. And oftentimes we are not in the state of openness to allowing. And sometimes my experience was because I didn't value myself.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And maybe something that others can relate to. So intentions high, expectations a little bit lower, but it truly, the magic in the manifesting, there we go. Alliteration. Cheryl, you know what that means when it's a we thing, we use alliteration for everything. The magic and the majesty in the manifestation is when we can align with allowing ourselves to receive.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. And you know, that just affirms a lot of what Cheryl and I teach, right? It all comes
Yes.
back down to that self-love and that self-worth. And we see that extended in the physical reality of the space, the place that people call home.
Yes.
And they are also pinching them off, pinching off themselves to being in that flow simply by holding on to possessions that are holding on to the energy of low self-esteem, self-worth, self-love.
And yes, Anita, if I can just kind of add one more ripple in the pond to what you just shared there, because that was absolutely brilliant. When you were talking about the objects things that we can't quite let go of, right? To me, in my experience, I'll just make it personal because I can't make assumptions for others, but for me, many of those items, objects, articles, what doesn't matter what it happens to be, many of them have stories attached with them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's those stories of what we tell ourselves about ourselves or about the experience or about that time, which also is a denser energy that kind of muddies the water and pinches us off from receiving and aligning.
Absolutely. I love this conversation because, you know, it so much is the inner world of Feng Shui that we've been talking about.
Yes.
And I know that we often, you know, work with our clients and our students, and we're always talking about the inner world is reflected in the outer world. And I think sometimes they get the outer world part because they can physically see and hold on to the tangible aspects of energy. And sometimes I don't think that they understand the inner world part. And you, my friend, can explain that so well. And it really will bring a new awareness to somebody, you know, to have that, oh yeah, okay, now I know what those girls have been talking about.
Can I add one thing then? Just, I'm looking at the time as well. Can I add one short exercise, 4-step exercise? Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Just,
of course.
Okay, I'm gonna, pardon me, I gotta unplug for a second here because I got props. Just give me 1 second, okay? Just 1 second. I gotta unplug the microphone. Just 1 second.
We'll hit pause.
You do that.
Hit pause. Okay.
Yes, sure. We can do that. Okay, David got his props. Let's go.
I have my props,
right? What is this? Here.
All right.
I'm just like this. I'm like a kid, you know, watching TV.
Well, and here's the, okay, so Anita, when we talked before about your audience or ourselves, there's a spectrum of where we are. There's a spectrum of our perception. There's a spectrum of our awareness. There's a spectrum of our openness, all of that, right? So this for you, Anita and Cheryl, will to me be kind of, I did that when I was 6 years old, right? It's going to be like old hat for you, this kind of stuff here. But for some, it may be new, right?
And it could be completely new for us too.
There we go. So just to give it a brief couple of sentences for context here. So the context, just for the continuity, is there are objects that we hold on to. There are objects that we hold on to that have stories attached with them or to them, whatever the grammar happens to be. So sometimes, Anita and Cheryl, in Feng Shui, there's some counsel about maybe clearing up of some things, right? Let's say things, right? Or some stuff. There's counsel to clear up and clear out. And maybe some of the resistance that might be held by a client who's resisting letting go of something, quite literally letting go of something or getting rid of it, is because there's a story attached to it that maybe feels really good, or there's a story that they have, oh, this is so cool. There may be a story attached that they haven't quite figured out the lesson yet, so they want to keep it around. And maybe at a higher level, they're keeping it around because the lesson quite hasn't been received yet, right? So for whatever reason, the lesson, the objects are still hanging around. Here's a 4-step process to releasing this. So let's say we have an object, or it could be a person. Just putting it out there, okay. But let's say, or it could be an experience. Here we go, an object, a person, or an experience. But we have something or someone in our life who, with the magic and majesty of Feng Shui, cleansing that and clearing that energy out would be really valuable for us. Very super beneficial. But we're kind of holding on to it. So I'm going to use part number 1. Imagine having kind of a black, this is black tourmaline, a black, here's the crystal, okay. But imagine that in this case, this crystal represents a dark experience, deep, heavy, dark, not feeling good experience that we're holding on to. So put it in your hand. We're holding on to this deep, heavy, dark experience here. So just kind of imagine in your mind's eye, holding on to in your heart, or it could be in your hand if it's the object. Actually, we could make it totally physical and implementable here, actionable here. Imagine holding the thought, holding the object in your hand, which holds some darker, deeper, heavier energy into it, and just kind of wrapping your hand around that, right? Okay, so I want you to hold that in your hand, but turn your hand over here. Now you don't have to squeeze it too tightly, but just hold on to it, right? Just hold on to it and palm down, right? And I want you to, for a moment here, just a second here, reflect on, I got the Bhagwan here, okay? That was one prop I needed to get. Reflect on the back of your hand. Imagine you've got kind of a Bhagwan mirror, right? So imagine reflecting now on what you're holding in your hand, that deep, dark, not so good stuff here. Experience, object, person, doesn't matter what it is. Imagine holding this mirror on the back of your hand and reflecting into yourself and saying, I'm looking at my reflection now. It is not about them. It is not about the experience. It is not about the object. It's not about the story. It's about me. So reflecting on the back of your hand here on what you're holding in your hand, you can squeeze it a bit tighter if you wanted to. Reflect, because anyway, reflecting on that and say, how am I stronger? How am I more insightful? How am I wiser? What have I learned from that experience? And here it's very important that we not connect with them at all. What did they get? Did they get the lesson? Did they figure it out? It's not about them. It's all about us. How am I stronger, wiser, more insightful? What did I learn from that experience that I'm holding on to here that didn't feel so good? All right, that's step 2. Then step number 3 is, because we've been squeezing that deep and dark and kind of heavy stuff here, the magic happens when, lo and behold, it becomes a crystal. Kind of like a piece of coal becoming a diamond in the earth, right? It becomes a clear crystal. Step 3. Valuing that crystal, valuing that experience. Man, there's value in that because I learned this. I gained this insight. I've got this greater awareness. Man, there's great value to this. Many people can step quite comfortably or can shift themselves quite comfortably into the mindset of step 3. There's value in that experience. The magic in the releasing, and as I counseled before, that stepping aside, stepping apart from that which didn't feel so good, is step 4, which is, I'm grateful for that experience. When you hold gratitude for an experience or a story, or the experience that came through that story with that object that you've been holding on to, that experience, that memory that you've been holding on to, the story that you've been telling yourself, when you can re-script that to see the value of it from maybe even perhaps a soul level, or just bring it right down to earth, 3D level, man, what did I learn, right? When you can go to step 3 of what you value and then shift, I would hope, quite naturally into step 4 of, and you might resist actually saying the words if it's somebody that hurt you deeply or an experience that hurt you deeply, but actually transitioning yourself to aligning to a higher level of awareness to say, I'm grateful for that. I'm actually grateful for that. When you hold gratitude for those experiences, there's no need any longer to hold on to the heavy, hold on to the weighty, hold on to the more dense. They can be released, or they've already been energetically released because you're holding gratitude.
Wow. That is so so worth watching again
Yeah,
and
that's.
again and again.
Mhm.
I'm doing it with you, and coincidentally,
There we go. There we
quartz
go.
crystal in my
So,
hand.
but here's and Cheryl, yes, to put it into context for us and for anybody who might be listening or watching this later. Grammar, listening to it or watching it later. This bit of a storytelling snippet, kind of a that's a snapshot. That's kind of a snapshot, sort of, from what I do in my sessions, right?
Yeah.
You might get it, you might understand it, you might connect with it to some degree, but it won't be until a day or a week or a month later when in the moment, it's like, oh, this is what I get to do now, right? When we actually bring it into reality and start to implement, activate, do something with it, right? So it's great to have it sitting up here or sitting out here, but there may come a time, and it might happen in the shower tomorrow, it might happen driving around the block next week, who knows where it's going to be, but there chances are could be a time when the triggering of the memory of this conversation triggers us or your listeners into that release into gratitude.
Mhm.
Well,
Beautiful. Okay,
on
well, I
that
can tell we're going to
gratitude
have to
note,
have, part 3 coming up, I'm sure.
oh, there's so many nuggets, Gratitude, David. You bring us around to a perfect segue again. Shocking.
Mhm.
To end this one, because like Anita said, we could go on for hours.
Mhm.
But our gratitude, our
Absolutely.
deep gratitude for your teachings. And we have been let in a little secret that David has a gift for everyone. And I would love for you to tell them what it is you would like to gift, besides all of this incredible knowledge.
Let me take a sip of water. Just 1 second here.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to drink some more coffee then.
So yes, thank you, Cheryl and Anita. So what I would love to share with your audience is an audio snapshot. It's just a snapshot, 7-8 minutes or in length. It is audio in nature. It was audio when it came through because it was part of a session that I was doing, and Cheryl, you were there. That was a year ago or so, and it was just a channeled, oh, we need this right now. And it's a very short snapshot that I have, although it was audio in nature, I have put it into a video format. The title is I Am Enough. And it is a series of statements, affirmation, confirmation, which guides us through the embracing of our awareness of being enough. And so, Anita, you said it will be in the comments. The link will be there. The link will be there.
Absolutely.
It's a very easy download. It's only 9 or so minutes in length. There's some music in there, some video in there. And it's a sample snapshot, if you kind of want to go there, that is so juicy for me because, and it sounds so, I don't know what it sounds like. I can't even put language into this, but there was a time within probably 3 or 4 months after this kind of came through, and Cheryl was part of that experience when it was live, that I was high on my own supply, if you want to look at it that way. I was listening to this 3-4 times in the morning and 3-4-5 times at night. I would just listen to it again and again and again. And every single time something in there would trigger in a different way. It's like, oh, got it. Oh, got it. Oh, I remember that. Okay. So it's a gift to share with your audience, to download, understanding that it's not going to, one listen will be good, but there are many lessons in many listenings of that.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of like these interviews.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to thank you for everybody,
Yes.
all of our audience, our viewers, our listeners. And yeah, the link is in the comments. So please, go there and pick it up and check out our friend David.
Absolutely.
I would be honored. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to wrap it up again Stay tuned. Funny feeling there's going to be more. Don't know when that'll be based on his schedule, but
all good.
Thank you so much for joining us on our F.L.A.W.C, which is now forever lovingly aligned with compassion. I love that. Thank you.
All good.
Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Blessings to all.